Awesome. Well, let's get stuck in, guys. So, thanks so much for coming again. We are here today to learn why we believe our vCIO tool is leaving a lot of the tools in the dust in terms of the methodology. And so, we sent some advertising out there, and we talked about a philosophical difference of how we do things. So, we're going to go through that today, and hopefully, like any presentation, you can take away a gold nugget, something you can learn to improve your MSP and move forward. So, for those of you that don't know me, I actually have an MSP as well. I started that business in 2000, so it's been a long, long time. And I'm pleased to say I've managed to scale it to 50 staff, 5,000 devices under management. And I've tried everything you can imagine, every methodology for whether it be your support desk or procurement or vCIO, QBR, all that sort of stuff. And so as we've been evolving the Invarosoft platform, we started around customer experience, and the market and competition have sort of pushed us down this road to build out a QBR VCO tool set. And when I looked around at the market and what everybody had been doing, I did notice something that was quite problematic for me as someone that's very passionate about the MSP game and someone that's really been in the trenches and done this over a very long period of time. So I'm going to be challenging your thought process a little bit in today's presentation about how you should really think about the QBR and VCO process, and it is in relation to actually growing your MSP, being more successful, etc. Because there is definitely some mistakes that I see after now speaking to hundreds of MSPs and comparing what we have been doing and what some of our more successful partners do compared to what other people do. You start to notice holes and gaps in methodology, and certainly the QBR one's a big one for me that I want to articulate about today. So with that being said, let's get stuck in. So who's this webinar for? It's for you guys, the innovators, the thinkers, anyone with a growth mindset. If you want to challenge the status quo, you're looking to do things differently, you're looking to learn from your peers and what other people are doing. When you listen to Invarosoft, you're often listening to my philosophy on things. You can believe it, you cannot believe it. I think the key is just to listen to everybody and take the bits and pieces from what everybody says and apply that to your business that you think is relevant. And of course, anybody looking to differentiate their approach. So well done for ticking one of those boxes. So what's the state of play? Let's get stuck into what I'm observing to be really what's going on in the market. And this is probably starting more at a philosophical level. So if I was to ask you a question on who owns the vCIO, QBR, TBR process, is it a technical function in your business or is it a sales function in your business? So usually when I ask this, we can try and sort of put hands up and do that sort of stuff. But inevitably, have a think about which one you think it is. Is it technical, run by the technical side of the business, or is it sales? In my personal view, it's definitely sales. And this is an activity that inevitably gets put on the shoulders of the CEO running the MSP, a technical manager, an account manager, maybe a senior engineer. Maybe if you're big enough, you've got a dedicated CIO in that sense, if you label it that way. But whoever's doing it, it is a sales function in the business. However, it is obviously supported by the technical. You can't go out and consult around technology without that technical aspect of it. But why do I believe that it is should be seen as a sales function in your business as the primary owner of the activity? Well, the reason is that when you do an audit or you discuss the business goals, this will equal issues or gaps and risk. It will then equal solutions, which means recommendations, proposals, or quotes, which equals dollars. It always equals dollars, right? So whether it be time, whether it be software, hardware, whatever it happens to be, there is going to be a dollar attached to anything that you recommend to customers. And so when you think about the typical person that's actually managing that process, there generally is a slight disconnect between the person running the process and actually what is needed to complete the process with the customer in that sense. And so someone has got to chase the dollar. So I'll give you an example, and that is my brother and I. So we were sitting at 3 million in revenue, and we hit 3 million. This is well over 10 years ago, and we were like, wow, that's pretty cool. We hit three. And then the next year we were like, oh, we're actually just going to hit 3 again. And then another year was starting to go by and we realized we're not actually going anywhere here. And so what was actually the problem? The problem was that my brother, who is a technical founder in the business, was being given the task of going out and speaking to customers about QBRs and TBRs, etc. And back in the day, we were using sort of this one option approach, and but it was mainly being run by him. Now, what he was doing was he would go and have a chat with the client, and then say, "Well, I've given you the details. You just come back to me. Just come back to me when you're ready." And so essentially, because he's not a salesperson, he is more pre-sales. He'll talk to you, he'll consult, and he'll do those sorts of things back in the day and was excellent at doing it. But he wasn't hardcore sales, seeing it as a pipeline, seeing it as anything else. So it was almost like, here you go, this is what you need. Let me know what you think and come back to me if you want to go ahead with it type thing. And so what was happening was is that we were having lots of conversations with customers, but no one was chasing the dollars. And what I mean by that is no one was chasing to get them to make a decision, because that's actually what is needed for them and for you. Because anything you're going to be recommending is usually around something that's either broken or there's extreme risk. And so you kind of do need that customer to do something about it. But we can't hide the fact that you're actually, to solve the problem, need them to buy something. And that is something where if the person running the process is not really focused on that side of things, they will actually shy away from doing it, like my brother was. He wouldn't do it. Like, he just wouldn't chase it. He'd be like, well, I told them they can come back to me. And so if you're sitting there and you're thinking, oh, gee, I'm not actually growing as fast as I could. I don't know why. I'm signing up new business and it's not really working. These are the sorts of things that inhibit growth. So otherwise, if you don't chase them, the buyer won't invest in a timely manner. And this is what I'm saying: you won't solve the problems and you won't grow. Right. So it's really important to understand. And you can look at it whichever way you want. If you want to say to yourself, well, it's 50-50. Excellent. But whoever is running this process should understand that there is a sales element to it. It cannot be denied. And there must be more thought around that. And what I'm observing in the market is that those that understand that there is a strong element of getting all the data and the technical things that you want to talk about, but it is sales at the end of the day to get a customer to do something, they are the ones that are scaling. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example now of what I'm actually talking about. And this is definitely from practical experience in my own MSP in terms of our growth. So from the day we started to do things a bit differently at 3 million, we're now at 10 million, and we've just been methodically growing. So we have reached that number organically. So there's been no acquisitions. Most of the MSPs you'll see that get to 10, 15, 20, they're just bolting on. You see it all the time in channel E to E, like they're buying little businesses and growing that way. So it's one way to grow. It's a great way to grow in this space, but we've managed to do it organically. It has taken a long time, but this is how we've been doing it, right? So I'll try and explain. So let's say you've got 50 clients. Have a think about how many clients you've actually got right now paying you a monthly fee, your managed clients in that sense. I would argue that you've probably got a pipeline of, say, ten to $15,000 per customer at any point in time that they need to spend. When you factor in a couple of laptops and desktops, a new firewall, a UPS, a project to go to Office 365, Dropbox, whatever it happens to be, it could be security stuff. There's going to be stuff that you can sell them with hardware, obviously helping you get to that sort of number. So when you look at it that way, you go, oh my God, I've actually got a $750,000 pipeline. So let's pause there for a second. Do you even think that way? Have you ever actually calculated it? Now, I probably should have put it in a little spreadsheet here, but what you can do is, and what we always do is we put our clients down the left-hand side of a spreadsheet. It's kind of like a sales system, and you start to go, okay, well, what kind of things do they need high level without getting into the nitty gritty of a massive audit? Obviously, you're going to know their environments. So you sit there with the person that actually understands all the environments, and you go, okay, well, that one probably needs a UPS. That one needs a project here. This one needs 5 new desktops, blah, blah, blah. And you just add it up in the spreadsheet, and you'll be shocked at how much it actually adds up. Most MSPs don't do that little exercise, and most people don't right now have even under any understanding of what their pipeline is of opportunity of their clients in that sense. So that's the first step, is to understand that this is a pipeline and these are things they need. These are things they need. This is not sales for sales sake, right? This is stuff that is broken, that needs upgrading, that needs to comply with your stack that you want to put in place, etc. It adds up, and it adds up real quick. So now let me give you the example of what the great MSPs are doing and what those that sort of meander along do. So firstly, if you're meandering along, you won't even have that target. You won't even be aware of it. You won't think about it. That's the first thing that the other MSPs are doing. So let's have a look at two scenarios of an MSP1, MSP2, both with the same number of clients, both with the same pipeline of opportunity in terms of QBR, vCIO, recommend all that sort of stuff. Their network recommendations, things that they need. So this diagram is my best attempt to describe what I'm noticing going on. Okay, so we know that the pipeline was $750,000. So if we just focus on year one for a second, what actually happens is this concept of sales compression. It's something that I talk about a fair bit. I'm not sure if it's an actual term, but the concept is this: is that if you see it as a pipeline, you are then going to do the things needed to try and sell those things, to try and get those customers to buy the things they need in their environment. So you're going to book the meetings in proactively to do your QBRs, TBRs, or just yearly meetings. We see it a bit differently, and I'll just have a little segue to say that we treat A clients as something you obviously, bigger ones, 4 or 5 grand a month, spending a fair bit with you, as something that you may want to see monthly or quarterly or whatever it happens to be. Your B clients, maybe twice a year, and C clients a bit smaller. You don't need to see them quarterly, like once a year. Your 10-seat accounting firm does not need to see you that often, given they may not be growing and that type of thing. So the concept of a QBR I have a bit of a problem with, because it actually is too much for small business. They don't need to see you quarterly. So a technical business review or a roadmap discussion or something like that does make more sense, I have to say, in the space. However, the more proactive blue one will go out and they'll book the meetings. They'll have the conversations, and then they will actually do what is needed to push that deal flow over the line. So they're proactive. The green is where you're being reactive. You don't know there's a pipeline there. Clients are like, hey, like, what are we going to do here? Oh, yeah. I'll get back to you. I'll do that audit, because you're sort of running around like a headless chook trying to figure out what's going on. All right, so you go and you sort of get dragged along and you present your recommendations, and then they kind of buy or they don't buy. And like my brother, you either chase it or you don't chase it. And I see green all the time, all the time in the MSP space, right? All the time. So what you can do is treat it like a pipeline, go out and start with the conversations with the most money. And generally, they're the biggest clients and probably the most meaningful to go and have those conversations with anyway. And go through that process proactively. And this is where this concept is of squeezing deal flow into a shorter period of time. So there's a key point here. I'm not saying that the green MSP isn't going to sell the stuff. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the blue one will just sell it faster. That's the only difference. That's that concept of sales compression, squeezing that deal flow into a shorter period of time. Lo and behold, increases sales and increases the growth of your MSP. Once you actually hit a deal, you sign up a quote, like you get them to sign the quote and move on, then you've got time to move on to the next one and to the next one. And this is what ends up happening, is that the green one ends up just doing the couple of 100 grand each year, because they had, see, that's 2, 4, 6 of the 750 grand. Whereas the blue one actually sells about 4 or 500 in that first year alone through sales efficiency and sales compression. They can then move on to the next one. And because they start to become a well-oiled machine, which is where my MSP is, you start to just keep pumping through it, having those conversations, being proactive and getting them pushed through the line. You then have other problems when you start to do this, of course, which is capacity around projects, but that's a good problem to have. Don't worry about that. Just focus on having the conversations and you can sort that other problem out later. Right? So don't be scared of growth. So have a think about it. Are you being reactive in that sense? Are you thinking about a QBR, TBR roadmap discussion as this compliance discussion, as like an admin conversation? Do you think that way? Or do you think about it that way and you look at it as a sales process? Because we think about it both ways. I mean, it has to absolutely be about compliance, about auditing, about getting to a certain standard. We think that way. We absolutely think that way. But we don't spend the whole meeting talking about that and doing what my brother did, which is to go, well, I told you, tick for me. I'm your technical consultant. If you don't do anything, it's not my fault. I told you. And here's the email to prove that I told you. Right? That is the mindset of what most people do. They think the job is done by actually having the conversation with the customer. No, it's not. You're in business to grow, to return to your shareholders, which is generally the business owner, to make sales and just keep the thing going because you're either going forward or you're going backwards. And this, I can tell you, is the biggest area of growth in your MSP. Selling stuff clients need is the number one growth area for your MSP. I've seen it time and time again in my MSP where through our sales efficiency and compression, we grew, and I'll give you the exact, even when we were small, 900 grand. I'll give you a sales compression uh, example that isn't around the vCIO. So we were at 900,000 revenue. I'm sure a lot of you are around that mark on this call, somewhere in that range. And then this guy turned up and said to me, "Oh, I've got this quoting tool." This is like 2005, before all the tools were really mature. It was called IT Quota in Australia. And I had been personally sitting there copying, like doing quotes by copying all the data from Ingram Micro's website, putting it in a Word document, then adding it up with a calculator. And then I'm exhaustively get the quote out the door. And then they'd sign up and I'd be like, oh my God, like they'd sign off on the quote to buy 20, 30 grand's worth of stuff. And then I'd have to place all these orders everywhere to all of the suppliers. And my heart would sink. I'd be like, oh, Jesus, I've got to do all this admin just to process the sale. Not a good mindset to be in when you're trying to sell stuff and move on, right? IT quota bloke turned up and he's like, I can automate all of that. And once I realized what he was talking about, I went, oh my God, yes, yes, I definitely need that. Now, I didn't know what was going to happen at this point in time. All I knew was, yeah, that should make my life a little bit easier. Well, what happened was we went from 900 grand to 1.6 million in 1 year because I did a great job of going out and having chats to clients and actually selling that stuff more efficiently. It was absolutely sales compression, and I put process in place for me to do it, right? 900 to 1.6 in 1 year. It was 5 people in my MSP. 5. And this was nothing to do with new business. I didn't sign up any more new business than I ordinarily did. All I did was was having those conversations and I was pumping out quotes and I was getting people to sign off and I just kept motoring through it and it just kept happening this way. So it is absolutely not unusual to grow in small MSPs by $500,000 or more in a year through sales compression. And this never gets spoken about by any of the vCIO QBR vendors. It annoys me because they've all come at this whole problem from the technical business owner mindset. Got to get all the data, got to present the data, job done. Sorry, job is not done. It isn't done because you actually do need to solve those problems for that customer. If they don't make a buying decision, that is not good for you or them because it's just going to create problems on both sides. So please, I'm pushing this point because it's massive. And if you're sitting there and you've been thinking, I've been trying to grow, I've been trying to get those leaps and bounds that everyone talks about, this is the area you can do it. You need to sign up new clients, there's no doubt, because that will be your new pipeline of this type of opportunity. And new clients, it has to be said, will obviously be more ready to just do something around their environment because they'll be moving away from another MSP that hasn't done a good job on the consulting side. So they'll be right for you to come in, do the audit, and go through this process. So the problem that I see out there is that with all of these tools that are out there, all of them, right? If sales is so important, if you believe me, remember, this is a philosophical webinar more than anything else. If you believe what I'm talking about, and you don't have to, but if you do, why do all the vCIO QBR tools focus on the audit and the data and not the sales process? Why? Why do they do that? Right? So when you look at your tool that you're using right now, I can almost guarantee, because I've looked at them all, and unless I've missed something, they all have this approach of having one option, one price for each of the things you're talking about with the customer. One option and one price. And that's about the extent of their sales methodology they've put in place there. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. This is the difference, and this is where we are leaving the other tools in the dust. But you have to go into this with this mindset of, do you want to do QBRs and vCIO discussions to just tick a box for compliance? If you do, those tools are great. But do you want both? Do you want to have that compliance discussion? And do you want to uh, make sure that the buyer buys something and that you can keep moving forward and growing your MSP? This is the number one area to do that. So if you believe both, then what you see today is going to be interesting. If you're still on the fence, hopefully you'll learn something today and you might be able to adjust what you're doing with some of those other tools. So let's have a look at it. I'll minimize everything. This is the Invarosoft platform. I won't go into the whole platform, but this is where you come in to our portal. You click the button here. I might open it up here so it doesn't open up on my other screen. And this is the client portal here. So if I went to the actual client portal homepage. This is just to give you an example of what Invarosoft is all about. We are the front end to your PSA. We make that whole experience clear and easy for clients to get access to you. We're that one pane of glass where they can log tickets and you can do all of these amazing things and have all the reporting and everything in the one pane of glass. And we have the module, which is our vCIO functionality, which I'll now show you. So in the back end, this is our admin portal. You've got the vCIO functionality here. So we're continuing to build this out. It's really strong right now, but we've still got more to go. So here you can do audits and presentations. And so effectively what you're doing is that you're now able to do the audit of each one of your clients and have a repository of the status of where all those clients are at. So essentially at a high level, you can create your your full audit, and these are the things that you're auditing, which are what these types are, and you create this. It's all templatized. You can add and change based on our system, but you create your audit template. You might then want to do a security audit template and have all the different types of things you want to talk to the customer that just focuses on security if you want to. You then go through and you tag green, yellow, red based on the data you're getting from your RMM, the data you're getting from other scraping tools, or from obviously observational. We cannot deny that a lot of this is observational. Would love to audit everything automatically, but at the end of the day, you need to do your observation stuff. You come in here, you can mark everything green, yellow, red, put a time frame to review. Your engineers put a comment in here. You can even log a ticket against it into the PSA if there's any issues that you need to talk about. And this becomes your repository to have at any point in time. If I asked you, well, where is that client? Like, where are they right now in terms of the status? Like, I'd say most of you wouldn't know. Even if you're using these tools, you don't really know where they're at any point in time across the board. So it's one of those things you have to kind of put a little bit of effort into to get it to where it needs to be. But once you do, you're right in this position to be able to do a presentation. So something that we'll be building soon is the assessments module. This will be underneath here where you'll be able to drop down each one of these parts and have additional questions that your engineers fill in to tick the box of doing the assessment. So the assessments module is coming, but right now you can absolutely have a beautiful, simple audit of every one of your clients. So in here, you can then produce a presentation. So now let's look at the front end of a presentation in that sense. So from the actual app itself, the first thing to note with the way Invarosoft does it is because we are also a CX solution, it's right there. They open it up and you can have buttons here just for your main contacts, and you can click a button and they can come in and see their reports. Okay, so what we're trying to do is make it simple, easy. I've done this a long time. I used to produce reports that were so freaking long, like super long, very detailed. I'd write essays about UPSs. And what I started to realize over time, was that no one reads it. Like, they just don't read it. It's too hard. And so I realized having short, succinct presentations that get to the point and describe everything you need is really the way to do it. And some of the vCIO QBR tools that are out there will do that in slightly different ways. Some have managed to do it quite simply. Some go on massive report style, 40 pages, 50 pages long. I think from experience that the customer who is non-technical probably appreciates simplicity, get to the point. Remember, if you sort of do anything around understanding personality types. So um, the disc profile, sort of dominant influencer, compliance sort of person. Most business owners that you'll be dealing with are high Ds. So they're sort of the dominant type of characters, and the communication methodology for them, if you haven't researched this, is just get to the point. They don't need the fluff. They don't need the detail. Just get to the point. What do I need to do? They're not technical. Your CFOs, CTOs, and those guys, if you're doing co-manage, obviously it's a different buying persona. They want to know how. They want to know everything about it, and so you have to do it a bit differently for them. But most SMB customers you have will be that high D personality. It's just the trait of entrepreneurs. And if you're an entrepreneur and you're the business owner listening to this and you've already done that disc profile, it's probably the same sort of thing. So it is important to get in the buyer's mind when you present this sort of stuff. Most MSPs get into their mindset and they want to present from their perspective outwards, whereas we've always been banging on, because we're in the customer experience space, of like getting in the mindset of the customer and coming backwards that way. So this is where you can come through and do a great presentation, simple, to the point of what you need to do. So you start with your overview page. Imagine you had a Word document. This is your overview page, and this is where you can start to have that more of a business conversation with the customer. Well, we're here today to talk about our audit, etc. We understand your objectives are X, Y, and Z. Is there anything specifically you wanted us to talk to you about today? But more specifically, we're keen to dig in a little bit more about what you're doing in your business. Where are you going? What are you trying to do? Are you expanding? Are you opening up new offices? Tell us more about what's actually going on. Is there a secure, are you dealing at enterprise level? Is there a security component to what is required here of compliance, etc.? So you have that conversation with them and you start to, as your opener, to talk about it. Then you can get stuck into the audit results in our system. So this is bringing through the audit data from the audit that you've done, and it's putting it in a green, yellow, red. And you can change the color of that green, yellow, red if you don't like it. And it puts it into that format. So a lot of systems do that. Massive tick. Completely agree with that. It's awesome. It's the best way to do it. When we went to doing that about 13 years ago, it really changed the game, because we were finding people weren't remembering what we were talking about, but they can remember color, especially if you're going to do a full audit with them and go through everything that you normally talk to them about. And there's going to be 20, 25, 30 things you're going to talk about. They're not going to remember all of that. And certainly they don't really need to remember most of it, or a chunk of it, I should say, if that stuff is green in that sense. So you go through and you're able to now talk about the different things in the environment and focus on the things that are urgent that you need to do something about. Now, this is where you can also be supported by the automation with our Microsoft licensing reports. This is being automatically done with our Azure AD integration. You can do the overall, the licensing per user, or you can do an overall licensing report. You can do devices as well. Currently this data is being pulled from our agent. We will be aiming to start working on Q2 so that we can pull that data from the RMM tool. We're currently working on our warranty data as well. So the warranty information will be coming through here. We've just been granted access to the HP API. So we're bringing that all in, and we'll have that in here as well. So you have all of your device reporting, warranty reporting, all in here, and you can put it nicely into the vCIO report. And the other thing I should mention as well is we're about to release our Microsoft Secure Score functionality. So you'll be able to drop that into the presentation as well. It'll automatically bring through the customer's score, and we'll have the commentary in there that you can use to discuss in this QBR. So you've got all the information there. You can put some custom pages in here as well. It could be some other reports or whatever it is you want. You can have that to facilitate your audit discussion. Now, my recommendation here is that you try, if you have an hour meeting, you should really be spending 30 minutes on the audit and then 30 minutes talking about what they're going to do. So have a think about how you currently do it. Do you go in there and spend 50 to 55 minutes talking about all the stuff they need with an obligatory kind of comment about how much things cost, and that's it? Or do you kind of try and get customers to make decisions? Some people are naturally doing this in their own way, which is fantastic, but most don't. So most will, because they'll be guided by their tool that they're using, it's all about talking about the audit. So they'll spend the whole meeting talking about that with a tiny amount talking about price. And so let me comment on that a little bit further. If we were to do at this point of this presentation what all the other QBR tools are doing, I would have just put a column here that said investment or price or something like that. All right. And we would have just had the column and enabled you to go, great, that project to go to Office 365 is 5 grand. That new firewall is $1,500. The internet connection is $300 a month, etc. And you go through and you get that. Now, it's not so bad. Like, it looks okay from the customer's perspective. They get to the end of this, that methodology, which is what all the tools are doing. And they go, oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. You gave me a great overview of everything. You've given me a bit of an indication of the investment. What's the next step? The MSP says, well, I'll go away and do a quote. And so the customer's like, cool, go and do a quote. I assume it'll be something of that nature. Yeah, I mean, it all looks fine. Just come back to me with a quote. So now, when you do come back to them with a quote, well, firstly, I should say, you've actually given that customer an out not to even engage with you. You realize they're not engaging with you at all at a buying sense because they're like, oh, cool, yeah, come back to me. Thanks for doing the audit. That was great. Come back to me on the quote. Phew. They're thinking, I've delayed that decision another week or two. I don't have to deal with that right now. Great. And they'll forget about it because no one actually wants to spend money on IT. No, some people do, but most don't. Most business owners are deciding, do I go and buy a boat or do I go and invest in my IT? You know what SMB's like, right? Bigger businesses have budgets, non-profits have budgets, and these types of businesses, some have budgets, but most in SMB don't. So when you do it that way, you've given them an out. And you do come back. So a week goes by or a few days go by, and now their interest level and their remembering of what you've talked about is dropping off. And so you're finding it hard to get into that second meeting with them. So you get them into the second meeting and you present this quote. This quote. It's one option, one price. Right? So now all the buyer can actually do is say yes, no, or go dark. Some will negotiate with you a little bit, but most don't because they don't feel qualified to negotiate with you. It's like when any of us, well, some of you will be super technical with your cars, but if you go with a mechanic and they give you this big long list of things, it's like, oh, Jesus, you either say yes or no. And you're kind of stuck because you can't really negotiate. You can't really argue whether it's right or wrong. They can't either as it relates to IT. So you've got to put yourself in the buyer's shoes. You slap a 20, 30, 40 grand quote in front of them. Their first reaction is to be like, ooh, do I need everything? Like, but they can't really negotiate because they can't negotiate. They don't say anything. They go dark, and they don't, and that's where you experience that chasing, and you don't know what's actually going because they've not been engaged in the process. So what we realized was in my MSP that this process can work. You're all selling stuff, but it's not optimal. And it's not optimal to that concept of sales compression. So this is the second part of where I see it falling down. So you might be proactive in having those roadmap discussions. And just by being proactive, you'll sell more. There's no doubt about it, but you can also slow down your sales by poor way that you present this type of stuff to people, which is what all these VCO tools are doing from a sales sense. So to solve the problem, we followed the buying psychology of how most people buy and started to do good, better, best methodology in that sense. So if you think about good, better, best methodology, instead of giving a client a $25,000 quote and then letting them say yes, no, or go dark, you can now give them the option, let's say 11, 12 grand, 25, 45 grand. So you haven't played your hand on price and you are now matching the buying personas of people. And there are uh, budget conscious buyers, the middle of the road that like a little bit of value, and then you've got your premium buyer, your Rolls Royce buyer. Now, in IT services, and specifically in SMB, there are not many Rolls Royce buyers out there. We know that. Nobody is just going, sure, like sell me whatever you want. They don't do that, right? But the concept of good, better, best enables you to match the way buyers buy in the real world. In the real world, there are options for everything. And I always say this to people, if you go and buy toilet paper, do you want the roughest guts cheap toilet paper or you want the Cleopatra smooth toilet paper? Do you want the, full on crazy yogurt that is, organic and all that type of stuff, or you just want standard yogurt? What do you want? Which gasoline do you want? Do you want premium unleaded? Do you want standard? Do you want diesel? What shoes do you want? all conditioned to good, better, best. I guarantee when all of you go out and buy your next phone, you'll be looking at all, because you're mostly technical, you'll be looking at all the specs and going, oh, I'm going to get that version of the phone because it's got more RAM or more processing power or whatever. Think about how you buy a laptop. So then why on earth would you just give people one option and one price when you yourself as a buyer like to have options? All technology businesses do it. Every business does it. So what is so special about MSPs that we only give them one option? Why? It makes no sense from a buying psychology perspective. And this is what frustrates me with all the VCIO tools out there, is because they don't get it. They don't understand. They don't put themselves in the buyer's shoes, and they're basically doing you a disservice because you end up having this elongated sales process because no one's buying things as quickly as they probably should buy things. So let me go through and how it works for, and you can do this with your support plans too. We did it first with our support plans, and then I realized, why aren't we doing this with our recommendations? We get too much pushback, people go dark, all these things that I've been talking about. And once we did, it was like, boom, this is where you start going whoosh, in terms of getting people to make decisions, because you make it easier. So let me explain it to you. So you don't have, you've got the three options here. And in our system, I will preface this by saying you can do one, two, or three if you want to. But this is how the good, better, best works. You can have a network diagram for each one. You come up with your minimum requirements that you're happy with. This is not about selling stuff you're not happy with. This is the thing that engineers will get. Oh, hang on, we're not going to sell that because that doesn't make any sense. Yes, you sell the stuff that they need, but you got to think of it this way: that what is the minimum they need? In the old days, it was like, well, get the hot swap drives put in the server, or do something like that simple, or a monitoring card, get a new firewall, put an extended warranty on something. These are examples of minimum things you can do to stop something from falling over in that sense. So you think about the minimum and you add that up. Once you do that, you then have the next price not too far away from it. That is double, but you contextualize it with the premium price, which is what they call an anchor price. So the whole idea is you start here, you add this one up a little bit more. They should be close together, and this one should be quite a bit further away. It is what they call an anchor price, and a book you should read is called Monetizing Innovation. Monetizing Innovation explains this really well. It's a small book, yellow cover, how smart companies build the product around the price. So price is everything, is what they say, like how you package and price things. So essentially, if in the old methodology you would go and say it's 25 grand, they have no context. It's just 25 grand. They can't negotiate with you. So the buyer's like, oh, but if you say, well, it could be 11, 25, or 45, how does 25 seem now? You and I know that we want to get them on the 25 grand investment. But now 25 grand doesn't seem so bad because you've put it next to 45 grand. The buyer in their minds thinking, yeah, I don't want to spend 45 grand. That's what they're thinking. So in their mind, they start looking at these two because that's where most people are. Right. So now they're thinking, okay, I've just made a saving of 20 grand by not selecting that option. Right. So that's when you first show the pricing. That's what they'll be looking at. Now, the reality is when you go through a table like this, we always called it Solution Builder. And for many, 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 many years, we were just doing this in a Word document, and it works a treat. So you can do it in a Word document. You can use the system like this. It doesn't matter. This is a methodology that works regardless of how you do it. The cool thing about doing it digitally is that it adds all the pricing up for you. So it's easy to have that conversation. So essentially, what ends up happening is you go line by line through the things with them, and this is why you need half the meeting to go through it, right? You need half an hour to go through this, or a period of time. You can't just do it in 5 minutes. You need to have this discussion. Now the customer's leaning in. They're literally rubbing their chin, pointing, leaning over to the person next to them going, well, what do you think we should do here? Right? As you go through, hey, I recommend this, but you could do that. In our system, you can see here with this firewall, you can have the one-time price and you can have the per unit cost. And when you highlight over it, when you're doing the conversation with them, you can have like the overview little words popping up of what you're talking about, and it'll automatically show you the units. If it's 10 units by $50 or whatever, it'll all be there for you to show. Right? So you can do both in each of these. So you go through and they pick. And I'll give you a good example of how this works really well in a conversation. And think about it from the buyer getting engaged. and the buyer making a decision compared to what perhaps you're doing now. So let's say you've got two servers. I know we don't do a hell of a lot of servers these days, but it's a good example. This server was their domain controller. It's just out of warranty. It's only 3 years old, and really the idea might be to do for a 3 to 5 year solution is to replace it. Could be to go to the cloud, but for the purpose of this example, let's say you're thinking, let's replace that server as the 3 to 5 year solution. And they've also got, let's say, a line of business application. Maybe it's an SQL server. I don't know why it's not in the cloud, but let's say it's sitting there and they need to do something about it because it's 7 years old and it is going to die. Right. So you could say to the customer, look, our 3 to 5 year solution will be to replace both servers. That's going to put you up in this range. If you can't afford both right now, we could put an extended warranty on this one, focus on getting the one that is going to die now, and we could circle back to this one in 3, 6, 12 months and sort it out then when you've got more budget to spend. So do you have the budget to do it now? Should we just get on and replace it? Or do you think you need to put the extended warranty on it? It just means that if anything in that server dies, the the motherboard, the hot swap drives, the fans, etc., will be able to replace it. And you could be talking about your sort of same day on-site warranty or whatever it happens to be. So the customer will then go, well, okay, yeah, that's a good point. Well, maybe we'll do this, maybe we'll do that. Can you see the difference? Can you see how now I've got the buyer engaged? I'm demonstrating that I'm on their side because I understand that they may not be able to do everything you want them to do right now, but I'm giving them options and I'm showing, I would argue, I'm showing better technical acumen because it doesn't come across like I'm just shoving a stack pre-packaged solution down their throats. If you give them one option, whether you like it or not, it kind of comes across that way because it's like take it or leave it. Take it or leave it. Like, this is my off the shelf stuff. It's not that way. I know it's not that way, but that's how it comes across to the buyer, right? You just boom, like that's it. Take it or leave it. This is now I'm engaging. They're on my where it shows we're on their side, shows better technical acumen, and now I'm getting the buyer to buy as opposed to being sold to. And can I tell you, there is a massive difference between someone being sold to, take it or leave it, or buying from you. All right. So you get to the end of this, you have your totals, your one-time upfront investment in that sense, your per month, and there might be a per year cost as well. And so you get to the end and you say, great, thank you so much for going through that with me. Um, my next step is to do a quote. So is there anything standing in the way of going ahead with what we've talked about today? Oh no, just change the licensing. I need like 5 more or 5 less of the Office 365 or whatever it happens to be. And they'll sort of tell you. But obviously there won't be much standing in the way because they've just gone through it with you. Now, in the context of getting buyers to make buying decisions, you've literally got them 95, 90% of the way to make a buying decision at this point in time, right? So now when you send that quote, instead of sending a quote to try and have this type of discussion with them, which is what most MSPs do, you are now sending that quote for sign off, for sign off. And that is the difference, right? Now you're chasing these quotes to get them to just sign off because you've already gone through it with them. They may have a couple of additional questions here or there, but my recommendation is when you do this, don't delay. Like, if you've got them on the hook, don't take 2 weeks to come back to them with a quote, right? Try and do it as quickly as possible because you've got to strike while the iron is hot and while their focus is there. They could get competing priorities come in if you take too long and then it just starts to drag out, right? So the whole idea is that you can templatize all of this. You basically create a product catalog in our system. And this is where you create your solution options here, a product catalog. It does not have to be 100% accurate pricing. You're just trying to have yourself set up so you can have these conversations with the customer in that sense. It is a sales tool to get them to make a level of a buying decision and to point you in the right direction of what they want to do and to get alignment on where you're going and helping you solve those problems for that customer. They can select what they want, you save the solution, and then you can mark it off so that they don't change it. And in the back end, you can have a look at it and then do your quote based on that. Then you can show them the roadmap. Okay, cool. These were all the red things that I think we should be doing in Q1. Q3, we can do the yellow stuff, and next year, let's focus on the green stuff. So you've got in this one platform a beautiful way to present the point of what's going on. This is all we've ever been doing at my MSPs. As I say, we're SMB, we're 10 million now. This is all we do. We don't bombard them with pages and pages of reports and different things. Sometimes we'll have to do that if it's a CFO or a CTO or something like that we're presenting to. But often this, like 9 out of 10 times, this is all we need to do. Traffic light systems, support it with some data, show the recommendations, show the network diagrams of what each one is, show them what the roadmap's going to look like, and they are happy as Larry. They think that was amazing. And when we present this way, because it's different from what every other MSP does, they lap it up, they love it. It shows your differentiation. Remember, I said at the start, this is for people that want to differentiate. This is how you do this sort of stuff. So now when we do new business selling, we will actually show this as part of our proposal of how we're going to come back to them, right? So this is where you can use this type of methodology to even differentiate when you're trying to sign up the client, because you're trying to do everything in your power to show that client you are the best choice for their IT partner. And you're not going to be able to do that if all you talk about is like, yeah, we're amazing, we've got the best staff, and we know Microsoft, and we're security focused. Like, boring. Everybody's saying that stuff. It's the visual things that you need to show of how you're going to come back to them, your client portal, all this type of stuff that's going to help you out. So hopefully that makes sense. This is not a full-on demo. If you want to have a more in-depth view of how this actually works, then please have a chat to us. So I'll circle back now, just cognizant of your time. So just to be clear, so the Invarosoft platform is a unified platform. Where we're going with it is that you can get your CX, your vCIO, CSAT scheduling. So if you've ever heard of Times Desk, we're looking at launching this at the end of this quarter, warranty end of this quarter, etc. And we're going to be adding a couple more products to the system as well, things like dashboards, AI, backup alerts, and that type of thing. So where we're in the market is to help you consolidate that stack and get more bang for buck, or you can buy these things individually. If you like what you see with vCIO, then have a chat to us about that. And it's all designed so you can provide the future of IT support experience. Get off the old way, phone and email. Get onto the new way, fade away email. There's no need for it. Tell clients if it's urgent, call. If it's not, use the app client portal. You'll now get the perfect ticket every time. You'll be able to show your vCIO tools, the Office 365 reports, knowledge bases, all that stuff in this beautiful um, client portal and methodology. And these are the things that clients are looking for to make decisions about who they pick as their new partner. And the whole idea is so you can convert more deals, be more productive by getting the right ticket information each time and reducing tickets, improving your customer experience so you get more referrals, better communication with live chat, push alerts, being able to see everything in the client portal. We help with improving your security with identity management and secure messaging. So through our system, you can send passwords securely, as we've just spoken at length today, improving that account management and sales process and helping you reduce stack costs and complexity. So that's what we're all about. If you're interested in what we've been talking about today, then the next step would be to book a proper demo. If you like what you see at that point, then we just help you set up the trial. It's all templatized. It actually doesn't take that long. We just connect your PSA and Azure AD, and then we just book another little meeting to find out what you want to do. So super easy in that sense. And if you want to book that demo, and dig in a little further on the vCIO side, please, invarosoft.com, book demo. That's Jessica's calendar link right there. So let's stop for a few questions. We've got 8 minutes to get stuck in before we close out the webinar. So hopefully there's a few questions there. If not, think of something, go for gold.
Yep. Right now, I'm not seeing anything come through. I do think you give them a lot to think about, though, Jamie. So you are planting a you're telling them how to maybe change their mindset a bit. So that may be part of it. But if you guys have any questions now, you can throw it in the chat. Looks like someone might be coming in. And yes, we will send a recording to everyone so you can share it with additional team members and whatnot. But yes, you'll definitely get a copy of the recording.
Well, let's get a bit of a sense check in terms of the just before you guys go. So, from what I've been talking about, obviously, I was trying to challenge the way you look at this whole process, doing it a bit differently. I didn't realize my MSP was doing things a bit differently, to be honest. It was only until I sort of started to do the Invarosoft thing and I started to talk to more MSPs and realize what everyone was doing. I was wondering why we kept growing and were achieving these things. So, put your hand up. I think you can raise your hand if you agree with and you like what you saw with sort of the good, better, best methodology. We'll see who's brave enough to do that.
Got a 4, 5, 6,
Okay,
7.
interesting. Very cool. Very cool. So yeah, and that stands to reason. You sort of get about half or thereabouts that agree with that. So that's pretty cool. So well, look, guys, that's the end of the webinar. Hopefully, I sparked a few ideas for you. You could try and do this sort of stuff with the tools you're using as well. Hopefully, you got some gold nuggets that will help you just generally improve your MSP. But again, if you're interested to find out more, go to envirosoft.com/book demo, book a time with Jess and the team, and we'd love to show you a little bit further with your branding and how that works. So with that said, unless there's any other questions, I think, is there anything in the chat?
Nothing else other than thanks, guys.
Yep,
Appreciate your
very good.
feedback, Jamie. Good feedback on the presentation. People liked what they've seen. And again, with that book demo, that'll be with me, and we can dig into the full platform and, of course, look, more into the vCIO piece as well. So really appreciate everybody's time and look forward to hearing back from as many people to book in that demo or just a quick chat with myself.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Take care.